Hey friends, it's Michael Kingswood. It's story time. Actually, it's Warship Wednesday because it is Wednesday. and hope you guys have had a good week since last we talked. Hope you guys actually tuned in this past Saturday for the latest story Saturday, which if you didn't know, and of course you know, it was the 38th story from Stories from the Great Challenge, which is the awesome collection of 52 stories that I wrote over the course of a year, a couple of years ago. And most of you guys should know that I am currently in the process of doing that again, a second great challenge to write a story a week for a year, and I am currently 8 Sundays rather into the year, and we have been crushing it hard. We've got 8 stories written, and we're getting ready to run a Kickstarter next month for the first volume of our new endeavor. Because unlike last year, whereas I waited to the end of the year to put the stories out to everybody, this time I'm doing it 10 at a time. So it'll be 5 collections of 10 all throughout the year, with the final collection of 12 being the one to culminate it. And the first, they're all big Kickstarter. The first Kickstarter is ready to go. It's going to start in a couple weeks. I'm working on story number 9 now. Story number 10 will be next week. And then after that's all done, this will get going. If you go to mykingswood.com/ let me put up the banner here, /52 and 23 V1 being volume 1, that'll get you to this page where you can sign up to be notified when the project goes live. And then you can support, because support is awesome, right? Anyway, so that's what's going on here. We'll pimp it some more later. But this being Warship Wednesday, as you know, I like to talk about naval history and cool stuff. Been talking a lot of submarine stuff because I was a submarine officer, and talking a lot about got a lot of stories out of Gene Flucky's book Thunder Below. But I got to thinking about that, and I was like, man, there are other awesome guys in World War II than just Gene Flucky. I mean, nothing against Gene Flucky, right? He's a great guy, but there were 7 submarine commanders in the U.S. Navy who were awarded the Medal of Honor for their actions in World War II, and I figured I'd talk about them as well. People who've been around the Navy have probably heard of 3 of them a fair amount: Dick O'Kane, Lawson, Red, Ramage, and Gene Flucky. I know Flucky a lot because I've read his book, and it's just great. And O'Kane had a bit of a reputation, and Ramage as well. And all 3 of those guys stuck around, became admirals in the Navy, and left big marks. The other guys are not talked about as much. See, John Cromwell, Sam Dealey, and Howard Gilmore. They maybe part of the reason is all 3 of them were killed at sea in battle. They were all awesome guys, made great, obviously gallant decisions and great command, the presence, and did great things for the Navy and the country. But they don't get talked about as much, and neither so much as the guy I'm going to talk about today. He should be, because like O'Kane, Flucky, and Ramage, he did live through the war, and he stayed with the Navy for a while and did great things. He didn't become an admiral, though. And I don't know if that's why he isn't talked about as much or whatever, but I had the opportunity to meet this guy once, and it was kind of cool. So this is the guy we're talking about today, George Levick Street III. Look at that dapper picture. I met him because when he retired from the Navy, he retired to Massachusetts, and he took over as a junior ROTC director at a school there in Woburn, which is not far from Boston. I went to school in Boston, and one of the years when I was there, I don't remember if it was after my freshman year or after my junior year. I think because I stayed back. I stayed back for the summer between junior and senior year in Boston instead of going home because I had to. Um, at the end of my junior year, I realized, holy crap, I need to take 2 elective courses, or I'm not going to graduate next spring. That is going to screw me all up from the Navy. So I took an English composition course and a philosophy course during summer school, and then also went off and did my Navy midshipman cruise. Um, so I stayed around for that summer. It was a good summer. Had a lot of fun, but I want to say the time. So I helped out with commissioning uh, uh, for our ROTC class that summer. But I think I also helped it out that freshman year. I think I want to say it was freshman year that I met Captain Street because he came and talked at. He was the commissioning speaker for one of our graduating classes. I think it was after my freshman year, because just as I'm remembering who graduated then, I think that's when it was. But I remember meeting. I mean, I didn't spend a whole lot of time with him, but he came to be the commissioning speakers. Walked up before the ceremony. I'm in my midshipman whites, and there he is. He's in the suit, and he's got his little ribbon with the Medal of Honor, light blue and stars. And it's like, holy smokes, who's this guy? And met him briefly, and come to find out he was a submariner, and I wanted to be a submariner. And it's like, wow, this is really cool. And I heard him speak, and that was about it. Didn't sort of like the you know, you meet briefly, but you don't really think about it until later. But it turns out this guy's a pretty interesting guy. Obviously, won the Medal of Honor, so obviously he's awesome, and he takes a good picture too, as you can see. Well, let's talk a little bit about him. I've pulled up a couple different sites with information about him, mostly Navy historical sites. If you go to Groton, Connecticut, they have a submarine museum based around the decommissioned ship, the USS Nautilus. Nautilus was the first nuclear-powered warship in the world, and there's a museum set up around that, and it covers all of submarine history, not just nuclear power. So they got a website, and they got stuff about, of course, all the submarine skippers who got medals of honor. And then, of course, the Navy Historical Center has information about famous Navy people, as does the Medal of Honor Society page. So I'm going to pull from a couple of different sources to talk about this. But let's talk about Mr. Street, or Captain Street, I'm sorry, for a little bit. Because he's an interesting guy, right? He was born in 1913, grew up in Virginia, and joined the Naval Reserve in 1931. 2 years later, he got a appointment to the Naval Academy, graduated, and went out to be a Navy guy. Served on a few surface ships, and then volunteered to be a submariner after he got in 1940, and went through submarine training. Went to his first boat, and was serving on that first boat. It served on for 3 years when the war started. So he was a lieutenant junior grade in 1940 when he became a submariner. By 1943, he was a lieutenant commander, which shows you how things happen in an actual shooting war when you need to build up the fleet. You got to promote people fast, and especially people of merit. So he served on, like I said, his first boat, did a number of war patrols on them. And then in late 1944, he went to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, where his new ship that he was going to command, the USS Tirante, was constructed. They constructed it, brought it over to Pearl Harbor, and then went on his first war patrol as CO, starting in March 45. And he was cruising along, did a pretty good start to the patrol, but then this happened in July. I'm sorry, let me pull up in April 14th, 1945. This is his citation for his Medal of Honor. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty as commanding officer USS Durante during his first war patrol against enemy Japanese forces off of Quelpart Island off the coast of Korea. The crew at surface battle stations, Commander Street, he was lieutenant commander at the time, approached the hostile anchorage from the south within 1,200 yards of the coast to complete a reconnoitering circuit of the island for purposes of understanding scale here in you know in naval and maritime parlance. You measure things in terms of nautical miles, which is different from your statute mile ashore. Statute mile ashore is 5,280 feet, right? Nautical mile is just over 6,000 feet, so just over 2,000 yards. Um, so typically we just round it in the naval service to 2,000 yards as a mile. And why is the difference? Because the nautical mile is based on 1 minute of latitude. So so that's just how it works out. At the equator, 1 minute of latitude is 2,000 is as a nautical mile, and just go from there. That's just the convention that's been gone with. Anyway, continuing on. So if he's 12,000 yards from the coast, he's less than half a mile from the coast, right? And he's doing a circuit of the island, leaving the 10 fathom curve far behind. Remember, 1 fathom is 6 feet, so 60-foot curve far behind. That means he's going into less than 60 feet of water. I don't know exactly what the draft of that the Gato class, the fleet submarines of World War II were, but it's not much more than 20 feet at most. Draft of on the surface, draft of a modern submarine is about 30 to 32 feet, depending on the class. These Gato class boats on the surface couldn't have been more than 15 or 20 feet. So you're gonna have a hard time submerging in that, right? So anyway, so he's going in there, and he penetrated the mined and shoal obstructed waters of the restricted harbor despite numerous patrolling vessels and in defiance of 5 shore-based radar stations and menacing aircraft. Prepared to fight it out on the surface if attacked, Commander Street went into action, sending 2 torpedoes with deadly accuracy into a large Japanese ammunition ship and exploding the target in a mountainous and blinding glare of white flames. The great thing about these Medal of Honor citations is they tend to get very poetic and very descriptive. You get your normal, citation or commendation award or something that's just, strictly, but these Medal of Honor citations are always kind of boisterous. It's great. With the Tarante instantly spotted by the enemy as she stood out plainly in the flare of light, he ordered the torpedo data computer set up while retiring and fired his last 2 torpedoes to disintegrate in quick succession the leading frigate and a similar flanking vessel. Clearing the gutted harbor at emergency full speed ahead, he slipped undetected along the shoreline, diving deep as a pursuing patrol dropped the pattern of depth charges at the point of submergence. His illustrious record of combat achievement during the first war patrol of the Tarante characterizes Commander Street as a daring and skillful leader and reflects the highest credit upon himself, his valiant command, and the U.S. Naval Service. That's his citation. For that he got for his Medal of Honor, which is pretty impressive. He, in addition to that, in one engagement on his patrol, he also sank a number of another transport ship, a tanker ship, and a few other vessels. He took out a fishing vessel, took some prisoners, and he got back to Pearl Harbor intact. And so that was pretty awesome. So that was his first war patrol as CO. And he got awarded the Medal of Honor. On his second war patrol, this is reading from the Nautilus Museum's text, which began on 20 May. Street and the crew of Tarante managed to virtually replicate that earlier attack, stealing into a Japanese harbor to sink an enemy vessel and then racing out before retaliation could be attempted. The sub also sank a dozen junks carrying supplies to the Japanese, as well as 2 patrol reports. These boats were stopped and their crews transferred to lifeboats and captains questioned before the empty vessel was set aflame. For this patrol, he received the Navy Cross and was promoted to commander. He was just setting out for his third war patrol when the war ended, and they went to the Washington Navy Yard, and then he flew to get his Medal of Honor. He stayed on active duty until 1966. He ended up commanding another submarine, as well as a destroyer and a transport ship. And then he went to become the professor of naval science at MIT. Professor of naval science is the person who runs the ROTC detachment. So he has in charge of training new midshipmen, which were new naval officers, which is awesome. And since that's the thing that I went through to become commissioned, I think that's kind of awesome too. He ended up commanding a submarine squadron and went to the Naval War College and closed out his career in San Francisco as the commander of a submarine group out of there. He retired as a captain in 1966 and moved back to Massachusetts. He took over as a JROTC instructor at a high school in Woburn and stayed there and died in 2000. He was buried in Arlington National Cemetery. I met him in the mid-90s, and it was, like I said before, it wasn't something that I thought it was cool, but it didn't really impact me as much as it should have, perhaps because I was still figuring things out and didn't fully know my submarine history, even though I wanted to be one. But impressive guy. And obviously dapper, takes a great picture too. But that's not the point. The point is that is a guy we should talk about more than we do. Like I said before, we talk about O'Kane, we talk about Ramage, and we talk about Flucky. But the other four skippers who got the Medal of Honor don't get as much discussion among naval circles as perhaps they should, and he should too. So hopefully this little discussion about him will edify, if not if not anything else. So that's what I got. A good dude. Like all submariners are good guys. That guy in particular is pretty awesome. And so let's remember him as we think about the guys who've gone to the past. Okay, I think that's all I got from this one. Remember that in addition to signing up to do in addition to everything else, make sure you go over here, do my upcoming Kickstarter, and sign up to be notified when it starts. Planned start time is 14 March, after I've got the first 10 stories done. I appreciate your support on that. Even if you don't want to do that, you can go to mikekingswood.com/store, get all my books, and of course, like this channel, subscribe. We do Story Saturday every Saturday where I read some of my stuff. Warship Wednesday, where we talk about cool naval history stuff as I learned about it or as I recall it, because I've got a number of books that I've read in the past and continue to read as I come up with fun, cool anecdotes. And we'll talk about the other submarine Medal of Honor guys because as a submariner, I think it's important to talk about them as weeks going ahead. When we get to Flucky, obviously, I'll have a lot more to say about his particular citation because I have his book to reference about his engagement. But that in no way is to take away from the other guys who I don't have as much material from. All right, well, that's all I've got. Hope you guys found this interesting. I'll talk to you on Saturday with Story Saturday. Until then, don't do anything I wouldn't do.